بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. We ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to grant us the sincere intentions. Continuing speaking about Musa alayhi salam, if you recall, we had mentioned that he had accidentally killed a man, and then the next day the person that he was trying to save made everybody aware that it was Musa alayhi salam who killed that man from the people of Pharaoh. So somebody advised Musa alayhi salam. They said to him, leave because they're going to kill you. So he did. He left alayhi salam, not following the normal routes, and he made his way to an area known as Madian. And this is the city of the Prophet of Allah, Shu'aib alayhi salam. Shu'aib alayhi salam, who we will speak about later insha'Allah, he was one of the Arab prophets. There were only 4 prophets that were Arab. Salih alayhi salam, Hud alayhi salam, who we've both spoken about. The 3rd prophet that was an Arab was Shu'aib alayhi salam. And the last one, of course, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Other than these 4 prophets that were Arabs, of course, the others were non-Arabs. Although Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam spoke Arabic, among other languages, but he was not considered to be an Arab like these 4. So we'll speak more about Shu'aib alayhi salam later, but the point of mentioning him here is that the area, the city that Prophet Musa alayhi salam left for, or let's say arrived at, was known as Madian, and it was the city of Shu'aib alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam covered a huge distance to leave the area where Fir'aun was and where his people that sought Musa alayhi salam were. And covering this long distance, he didn't have any time to prepare, to take food with him or to take clothing with him and so on. So he ate whatever he could find on the way. He would eat from the fruits of the trees and so on. So when he reached Madian, he came to some water. There was a well. And the people at that time, the people of Madian in that specific place, they were giving their animals to drink. They were giving their flock, their grazing and their farming animals, they were giving them to drink. He also found 2 women behind these people. So there were men, there were shepherds, many of them, and then behind them all, so these were giving their livestock water. And then behind them there were 2 women who were just standing there. And they had animals also. And it was obvious that they wanted some water. The women waiting, they waited for the rest to finish until they could water or give water to their animals. And Musa alayhi salam, when he saw that, he helped those women for the sake of Allah Ta'ala. The men, it said, what they would do, that those shepherds, is that they would take from the well, and then once they've taken from the well, they would close the mouth of the well with a large stone. a large, long stone. They would slide it over the well. And it would take quite a few of them to do that. So when they finished, they closed the mouth of the well. So Musa alayhi salam, he got up from where he was sitting, and he, by himself, because he was very strong, you'll hear some stories about his strength later, alayhi salam, but our Prophet was stronger, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He was given the strength of 40 men, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in physical strength, in war and otherwise. So Prophet Musa alayhi salam, he by himself moved that stone and uncovered the mouth of the well, and he helped those two women. He helped them get water. Then, after he did that, he came and he sat down. And Allah revealed this story in the Quran. So then, those two women, they went back home, those two girls, young women, they went back home and they had a lot of water. And they mentioned to their father, who was an old man. Now, some scholars, they assumed that this man was Sayyiduna Shu'aib alayhi salam. But this is not confirmed that he was Prophet Shu'aib. You might have heard that, yes, this was Shu'aib alayhi salam, the one that had two daughters that Musa alayhi salam helped, but this is not confirmed. Some of the scholars, they said otherwise. So Allah knows best. Was this Shu'aib alayhi salam, or was it not? There is a difference of opinion. So this man, whoever he was impressed by Prophet Musa alayhi salam's manners and his actions. So he sent one of his daughters back to where Musa alayhi salam was. He sent one of them to invite Musa alayhi salam to come and stay with them. When they started to go to the house of their father, Musa alayhi salam, he decided to walk in front of her so that his eye wouldn't fall on any part of her exposed body, if it was to become exposed from the ankles and above, for example. So she stayed behind him and she directed him where to go until they reached the house. So Musa alayhi salam, when he sat with this man, who some said was Shu'aib, he told him what had happened, how he had been raised in the palace of Fir'aun and everything that happened. So he said to him, "Najawta min al-qawm al-zalimin," which means that you have escaped, you've been granted safety from those unjust people. So this was comforting for Musa alayhi salam. Then Shu'aib alayhi salam, or the elderly man, if you will, he had, or might say, his eye on the prize, as it were. So he had been looking for a husband for one of his daughters, or for his daughters. So when he heard about a person with the immense manners of Musa alayhi salam, he decided to marry his daughter off to him. So he offered his daughter in marriage for 8 years of service, as Allah revealed in the Quran. That Musa alayhi salam was told that you work for me for 8 years and I will marry my daughter to you, I will give you my daughter's hand in marriage. ثمانية حجج, if you work for 8 years. So Musa alayhi salam, he chose to make it a whole 10 years. He added 2 years out of his generosity. So Musa alayhi salam worked on the land of this man for this time, for a decade. And this person got to know Musa alayhi salam very well. And in the past, the scholars, they would advise. Likewise, Sayyiduna Umar radiyallahu anhu, he advised that if you want to know somebody, then accompany them. You accompany them for a short or a lengthy period, and you get to know them. Someone who is, as they say, faking it, how long can they keep that up? Eventually, a person's true state will come to light, a person's true nature. How patient are they really? How truthful are they really? Because people at face value, of course, they don't want to be thought ill of. So everyone usually is nice to everybody else, okay? But then when you spend a lot of time with, for example, somebody you knew who you saw them, let's say, once a week or twice a week, or you saw them once every month and so on, or you don't mix with them that much, but then you had to, let's say, travel with them. The travel, the scholars said that as-safar, it means to uncover. As-safar. That's why a woman who is showing her face, she's wearing a scarf, but if she's showing her face, then they call her the safira woman. The woman who is uncovering her face. So when it came to traveling, a safar, the scholars said you should travel with a person who you want to get to know, because this will uncover the truth about them. This will uncover the truth about them. So the scholars would advise that if you, as a father, are looking for a son-in-law, someone to marry your daughter, then travel with them. Travel with that person. Book a ticket and go with them. How long are they going to keep it up? If this isn't their true character, how long are they going to keep it up? Why? Now in the past, of course, traveling was very, very difficult. La ilaha illallah. It was very, very difficult. People would travel for months and months and months. Okay. But it's not much easier. It's not easy now. Jet lag for one. It's not easy now. You go to the airport, you wait there for ages. They put you through security, you get your boarding pass, you go through security again. Random bag checks here and there perhaps. You've got to wait in the line, you've got to wait for your row, you've got to wait for people to put their bags in the different compartments. You go, you find someone's in your seat, you find that someone's filled your compartment, you've got to take it all the way to the back, you've got to come back, you need to go to the bathroom, 16 people are lined up. It's not easy. You want to sleep, but you don't have any leg room. There are children that are kicking your seat from the back, pulling your hair, doing all sorts. Traveling, okay, if you travel with this person, how long are they going to be able to keep it up? If it's just the front. That's why السفر يسفر عن أخلاق الرجال. Traveling, it uncovers people's true manners. It shows you how patient they are, how they deal with hardship. This person wants to take your daughter. Let's see how they deal with hardship. They're in a tough situation. What decisions do they make? Are they going to take a haram route out of this, or are they going to stay strict and stay in compliance with the rules of the religion? La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. The scholars, they say, they thought of everything. So they said, this is one way. Travel with the person. Might be it doesn't have to be on a plane. It could be on a train. Could be, I don't know, a bike ride. Something. Okay? You regularly mix with that person. Regularly be with that person. Also, they said you should test this person with money, if you could. To give them a responsibility with money. Subhanallah. In the past, people would do this a lot more, and it was more apparent where someone had, for example, a daughter who had good manners, and she was someone who was an honorable Muslim, someone who would be sought after. So this is someone who the father doesn't just want to give away, of course, just like that. So from a very young age, some fathers would test children. They would maybe give them some money. Oh, can you go and buy me something? See if he brings it back. Can you imagine how many people were given money? We never saw the kid again. Where's he gone? So they would give them money. They would test them. They would see. They might shortchange them. They might not give them enough. Some people, some youngsters, some teenagers, then who have good manners, for example, or even special manners, they might go and they might add what was short from their own pocket and not mention anything. That's a good boy. That's a good person. You give someone some money, and it's 10p short, 20p short, it's £1 short. You make it look like an accident. He takes it and he brings you the item. You think to yourself, I didn't give him the right money. And he didn't even mention it. Like this, the scholars, they mention things like that. It's fascinating. Fascinating to read about. Some of the scholars, they wrote whole chapters of ways. Okay, then try this. Then try this. To see the right person. Likewise, somebody looking for a wife. Some of the scholars, they mention that if a person is looking for a spouse, then maybe if one should give someone who they are looking to marry, give them a responsibility. See how they do with that responsibility. Do they do it on time? Do they take it seriously? Do they... So this man, perhaps he was Shu'aib alayhi salam, he was looking for somebody good. MashaAllah, he found Musa alayhi salam. Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah. This person, a messenger of Allah. Allahu Akbar. To whom the Torah was revealed. Him and his brother Harun. So Musa alayhi salam, he took care of... he shepherded sheep for a while. Now this is very important. Shepherding sheep, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, مَا بَعَثَ اللَّهُ نَبِيًّا إِلَّا رَعَى الْغَنَمِ. Every prophet shepherded sheep. But we do not call any prophet a shepherd in terms of that being an occupation for them. So no prophet was a shepherd in that was what they were known as. That was their job. that's because many people, they might consider a shepherd to be an ignorant person. They'll say, oh, he's not learned. He's a shepherd. And likewise, some of the non-Muslims in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Jews specifically, they would rely on a type of word play, and through that they would insult the Prophet ﷺ. They would say ra'ina, which can mean take care of us, take care of us. But it can also mean, and this is what they intended ra'ina, which means our shepherd. So they would say that to insult the Prophet ﷺ. That's why Allah revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, say to the Muslims, unzurna. Say to the Muslims to say unzurna instead of ra'ina. So every Prophet of Allah at some point in time shepherded sheep. And this was a preparatory, let's say, task that every prophet was given to prepare them for dealing with people later on. So sheep, they don't have an intellect. Like all animals, they go based on desire. They move they're hungry, they'll go and eat. Okay, they're thirsty, they'll go and drink. They're based on desire. So you can't sit there and point your finger at the sheep or the goat or make it understand or tell it sabr. You could try, okay? But you can condition animals, they're not going to understand. Even then, so when animals don't understand, like I have a friend, he told me in Turkey that he is a shepherd. So he told me the first time that they got me to shepherd some sheep, they gave me 3. They said, go, take care of them. 3 or 4, maybe even 6 or 7. He said, I went and I was exhausted at the end of the day. I was exhausted. I had mud on me, all my clothes were wet, and so on. One of the sheep jumped in the river and was going downstream. I was watching it. One of them climbed a tree. One of them was in someone else's land. One probably got stuck in barbed wire or something. He said, there's only one of me. There's only so much one person can do. He said, it was so hard. He said, I felt like I was going to lose my mind. So then he said, 3 or 4 years later, I was able to sit under a tree with a staff, and I was able to tend to 1,000 sheep in my flock just by making sounds with my mouth, because he got used to it. He got used to it, and he was so patient. Being patient with animals prepares a person for being patient with people. Imagine, so now we're not talking about animals anymore, okay? Animals who have desire and they go towards what they desire. You have human beings who also have desire, and some of them, well, those of them, okay, let's say all of those that have an intellect, some of them don't use it. Those who have common sense, some of them who have common sense, don't use it. So they go towards desire. Then, when, for example, you say, what are you doing? That's wrong. Then they try to wriggle out of it because they've got an intellect. They have the ability to lie. So they try and get out. So to be patient with that, what prepares a person for being patient with that? This one's lying, this one's manipulating, this one's stubborn, this one's arrogant, this one's insolent, this one's got bad manners. How do you deal with that? This one doesn't understand the first time, second, third, or fourth time. This one is doing this because someone did something else to them, and they're doing that because they got treated this way, and then it comes full circle. How do you deal with all these different complex mentalities? Well, you need to be prepared for it by caring for the things that don't have an intellect in the first place. So he said like that. I used to deal with I used to make a noise with my mouth, and 60 of them, they come this way as I wanted. In the past also, some of the scholars, they mentioned that if you want to, and one of my friends told me this from Ethiopia, he said that in our village they still do this, where if somebody comes to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage, they give him sheep. So here you go for the day. This is your task for the day. They might give him a staff. They say, oh, you want our daughter's hand in marriage? Okay. Take those three. Take those three, see you at Maghrib. So he would go. He said, one of my friends said, some of them, from other tribes in Ethiopia, they weren't used to that. They didn't know that. So one of them came to ask for one of their daughters' hand in marriage, and they gave him 3 sheep. He was a little confused. They said, see you at Maghrib. Come back at Maghrib. He never came back. He never came back. They perhaps found the sheep, some sheep here, some sheep over. Never came back. Some of them, my friend said, some of them would come back, their garments torn, hair everywhere, mud on the face. So some of them, so they wanted to see, my friend said, we want to see, can they care for these animals? Will they be gentle with them? Will they lose their voice? Okay, well, when they come back, will they lose their voice? Some of them come dragging one of their legs. Some of them come wounded. If you can't, so they're saying what? If you can't care for these animals, you can't be soft with these animals and patient with these animals, you're not going to be able to, you can't have my daughter. Either because my daughter is hard to handle, you need to be patient with her, or because you can't be soft with the animals, how am I going to give you my daughter? And the Prophet ﷺ said, اتخاذ الغنم بركة. Acquiring sheep and livestock, in that there are blessings. It teaches people about the simple life. It makes a person appreciate. It really does make a person appreciate what they have, where food comes from. And it's very, very difficult, if a person owns an animal, sheep, goat, cow, it's very difficult, especially if a person becomes attached to that animal, that they've raised that animal, they've fed that animal, then to sacrifice that animal on Eid al-Adha, it can be very difficult. But if one gets more reward because it's difficult for them. So they push themselves for the sake of Allah, they slaughter that animal that they raised, that they nurtured, that they fed. They slaughter it for the sake of Allah. They sacrifice it in worship of Allah Ta'ala, and they distribute its meat. That's very, very rewardable. So even Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam said, before he received prophethood at the age of 40, he said, ما بعث الله نبيا إلا رعى الغنم. Every prophet shepherded sheep. The companion said, وأنت يا رسول الله, وأنت? Well, what about you? And you, O Messenger of Allah? He said, نعم كنت أرعاها على قراريط لأهل مكة. And the scholars differed about what this means. He said, yes, this is confirmed. He said, yes, even I used to shepherd sheep on qararit. Qararit, some scholars said it means an area in Mecca known as qararit, that I used to go there and I used to shepherd, I used to take care of sheep for people at one point in time. So our Prophet did this, alayhi salatu wassalam. Subhanallah. We would love to live our life like like the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. There are so many benefits in that. Look at that, if I was to tell you that yes, every Prophet, for example, did certain things. Every Prophet had a staff, a stick. Every Prophet shepherded sheep because there's a benefit in it. Allah made it be that way because it makes a person very, very strong. It prepares a person to be a strong leader, a patient leader. Not everyone can be a leader. Not everyone can lead. One, being very knowledgeable about the rules of the religion doesn't automatically qualify a person to be a leader. There is no positive correlation between the two. One of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, his name was Abu Dhar al-Ghifari radiyallahu anhu. Abu Dhar was among the awliya. He was a pious slave of Allah, among the awliya. But the Prophet ﷺ said that Abu Dhar will not lead, meaning he will not be a leader, because there are certain qualities that a person requires to be a good leader. Being pious, that alone is not enough if a person doesn't carry those other qualities. That's why being the Khalifa requires certain things. Sayyiduna Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu was the Khalifa because he possessed those qualities, those attributes. Likewise, Sayyiduna Umar, Sayyiduna Uthman, Sayyiduna Ali, Sayyiduna Al-Hasan, Sayyiduna Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiyallahu anhum, wa Sayyiduna Al-Husayn. And also a person, just because they feel that they are charismatic and they have confidence and they have energy, that alone is not enough to make a person a leader, to lead a people. Being a leader requires wisdom. Being a leader requires for a person to be strong and what might seem to some people harsh, when harshness is, or when strength is needed. الشدة عند الشدة واللين عند اللين. That they should have the ability to be soft when softness is required, and to be strong and tough, strict when strictness is required. And not everybody can do that. Not everybody can do that. And then beyond that, some people can't understand how a leader would be strict. They don't understand that. Some people have this idea of Sayyiduna Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu having been a very soft person all the time. Sayyiduna Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, he waged war on those people that did not pay zakah, on those Muslims that refused to pay zakah. He took up arms against them, as is an obligation upon the Khalifa to do. He did that. So one follows the rules of the religion. Where one needs to be strict, one is strict. And where one is, when softness is required, then a person is soft and gentle. So Musa alayhi salam, he chose to make it, he chose to serve this elderly man, who some said was Shu'aib alayhi salam. He took care of the sheep, and he did other things for this man for a decade. And then he married his daughter, the daughter of that man. Let me touch upon something else. What makes a strong individual? What prepares a young man or woman for the hardships of life? It's not social media, is it? It's not computer games. A person on a computer game can be the strongest and the best, and they've got so many things in their inventory, and so many coins, and so many, and so many, and so many. You send them to the corner shop to buy a pint of milk, they can't do it. They shiver. In the game, they're a hero. And online, people fear them because of the character that they've produced. But in life, so does that prepare a person? No, it doesn't. To have the confidence to speak the truth, that's something that's acquired. It's something that usually you're not born with. To be able to speak the truth when 100 people are opposing the truth, to be able to stand there, stand your ground and speak the truth, that requires nurturing. That requires for a person to become accustomed to that. It doesn't happen overnight, usually. Of course, if Allah creates it within a person, then this, the situation will change overnight. But for most people, this is not the case. These attributes need to be acquired. So one thinks nowadays, with raising children, how is it that we are preparing them to be strong human beings? Allah Ta'ala prepared the prophets in many different ways. One of them was that they shepherded sheep. Look at that. Musa alayhi salam, Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, all the prophets, they did that. So we need to think very carefully about how we are shaping, the methods that we're using to channel certain good qualities towards our children so they can acquire them. Otherwise, it's not going to happen through wishful thinking from us as parents, from the parents. Okay. With regards to Musa alayhi salam, we will stop here and we will continue next time. This was our third session speaking about Musa alayhi salam. But now we're going to move on to speaking about some matters related to the prayer. This deed that is the most important deed that we can do in the day and the most rewardable. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, وَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ أَفْضَلَ أَعْمَالِكُمُ الصَّلَاةِ. Know that the best of your deeds, the most rewardable of your deeds is the obligatory prayer. So, if a person, we're going to talk about the sunnahs first. If a person was to leave out one of the sunnah matters of the prayer, then the scholars refer to this as makruh tanzihi. Makruh tanzihi. Makruh tanzihi means that it's not sinful, but it's disliked. It's something that's not desirable. It's something that is negative. It's not positive. It's not good. To leave one sunnah of the prayer, this is something that is disliked. It means that the reward that a person could have achieved, that they can't achieve that now. They could have achieved a certain amount of reward with that sunnah that they could have done, but they didn't do it, so the reward is lessened. So what about if a person left a sunnah forgetfully? If they forgot to do it, yes, of course, they missed it. But they do not perform sujood as-sahu. You remember, we spoke about the wajib matters. The wajib matters of the prayer. If a person forgot to do one of the wajibs, and they were still in the prayer, this is when they can do sujood as-sahu. At the end of the prayer, they do the two sajdas at the end. And then they recite at-tahiyyat and so on. But if a person misses a sunnah and they're still in the prayer, they forgot to do a particular sunnah and they're now still in the prayer, for example, they were praying an obligatory prayer and in the fourth rak'ah, let's say, it's sunnah to recite al-Fatiha, they forgot to recite al-Fatiha. So, here, they cannot redeem themselves by performing at the end of the prayer sujood as-sahu. They missed it. So they do not perform sujood as-sahu in this situation. Okay. If a person was performing the prayer and a person, let's say, for want of a better word, person got lost. They didn't realize, they didn't remember which rak'ah am I in. Perhaps that's happened to you. Perhaps you go completely blank. All you remember is, I'm praying. And you go completely blank. And sometimes you might think to yourself, how do I not remember? How do I not remember how many sajdas I've done? Maybe a person was thinking about something else. Maybe they were outwardly praying, but inside they were somewhere else. Or it happens. It might be the case that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala made them forget. So, for example, a person forgot. So they don't know, am I in my third? So they're praying, let's say, the fard of al-dhuhr. So they forget. Am I in my third rak'ah or am I in my fourth? Okay? So here, if this is the first time this has ever happened, one of you might say, it always happens. No, here firstly, if this is the first time that this has ever occurred, then here, what a person does is that, was it 3 or was it 4? Was it 3 or was it 4? I don't know. Here, what do? They start the prayer again. From the beginning. Okay? So, if you're a person who forgets regularly, okay, then this would have already happened. Perhaps when you were 13 or 14 or 15 or 6. Okay, it probably would have already happened. Okay, if right now it happens for the very, very first time, then you would just start the prayer from the beginning. Okay, if it is the case that it has happened before, and you don't have any fingers to count how many times, you don't have enough fingers to count how many times it's happened before, then here, a person again forgot which rak'ah it was. So a person would exert an effort to determine which rak'ah they are in. So this person might feel like, most likely, look, I think I'm in the fourth. They're talking to themselves inside. Think, yeah, I think it's the fourth. Like, 80-20, I'm thinking it's the fourth, 80%. Yeah, so in this case, a person continues the prayer with what feels stronger. So they think that it's the fourth. Yeah, they feel like it's, 60-40. 60%, I'm saying it's the fourth rak'ah, and the other 40%, I'm saying it's the third. So they go with the 40. They go with, they go with the 4 rak'ah. They go with the 4 rak'ah, 60%. Okay? To give another example. So if a person was in the 4th rak'ah, then they would, because they feel strongly about it, they would continue in the 4th rak'ah. That means that if a person was in a prayer and then they lost themselves, is it the 3rd, is it the 4th? And then they started to think, I remember I did the 2nd rak'ah, I sat down for the tashahhud, then radio silence, then I don't remember. I sat down, yes, I did the tashahhud and I recited and so on. And Al-Fatiha, I don't recall reciting Al-Fatiha and then a surah in this last one that I'm in. So it's most likely whatever it is. Eventually they say it's the 4th. Okay? So in this case, a person would take by that. If a person, third scenario, the first scenario, if it's the first time that it's happened, start the prayer again. If it's happened before and you think it's more likely as one over the other, go by what's more likely. However, if a person exerted the effort to find out what's most likely, but you could not reach a conclusion, now what does a person do? A person says, is it my 3rd or my 4th? So he's certain that it's at least the 3rd rak'ah. So then he follows that is the 3rd rak'ah. Like if a person was 50-50. So you go by the lesser number in this case. Now there's another rule which pertains to following this method. This method. Let's say if a person exerted the effort and they did not come up with a conclusion that it's most likely this or most likely that. So a person says, okay. So they didn't come to the conclusion that most likely this is the fourth rak'ah. Then a person would be certain that then he goes by what he is certain, which would be the third rak'ah. So he says, fine, this is the third rak'ah. However, they say, so the Hanafis, they said that, just a second, the Hanafis, they say that since the third rak'ah that he thinks he's in, it's the third rak'ah, or it might actually be the fourth rak'ah, because he wasn't 100% certain. They said, in this third rak'ah, he must also sit for at-tahiyyat. He must also sit for at-tahiyyat in the third rak'ah. Because, he thinks it's most likely the third, right? Or he thinks, he's certain at least it's the third, but it could be the fourth. So just in case, okay, he sits for the at-tahiyyat in this third rak'ah as well. Because it could in actual fact be the fourth rak'ah. So then after he sits for at-tahiyyat, he stands up for a fourth rak'ah, and then he sits down for the fourth rak'ah as well. To say at-tahiyyat, because in case it's actually the fourth rak'ah. So one needs to remember that. So the example that was mentioned is that if he was performing the prayer in the first rak'ah, or he was praying al-dhuhr and he doubted, am I in the first or am I in the second? And he could not come up with something after he exerted the effort to do so. He couldn't say, he doesn't know which one is most likely. So here he goes by what is certain. He goes by what is less. Okay. However, since there is a possibility that he might actually be in the second, so he's going by, okay, it's the first rak'ah for sure, at least it's the first. Because it might be the second, okay, at the end of this rak'ah, he would recite at-tashahhud, he would recite at-tahiyyat. And then he stands up for his second rak'ah, and then at the end of the second rak'ah, he also recites at-tahiyyat. Then in the third rak'ah, when he stands up, that might actually be his fourth rak'ah. Okay, it might actually be his fourth, so he would then sit down for at-tahiyyat again. So in this prayer, this 4 rak'ah prayer, he sits down for at-tahiyyat in all of the rak'ahs. Because the first might be the second. The second is his second. The third might be the fourth. And the fourth one he has to sit for the last rak'ah for at-tahiyyat. So in this example, he is sitting and reciting the at-tahiyyat in every rak'ah. After he does all of this, he performs sujood as-sahw. Why? Because this sajda is the sujood of having forgotten, and he didn't have a clue. He did at-tahiyyat in all, he had to do at-tahiyyat in all 4 rak'ahs. So it's wajib upon him to do that after he says the salam. And remember, sujood as-sahw is when a person says assalamu alaikum to one side. So a person's in the last rak'ah, they've recited the at-tahiyyat, okay? And they've gone up to wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, okay? Then here they say assalamu alaikum to one side, and then they go from the sitting position, that position, they go into sajda. They say what they say in the sajda, they sit up, then they go into the second sajda, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, and so on. Then they sit up again. They've completed sujood as-sahw. Now what do? They recite at-tahiyyat again until they finish the prayer as normal. Okay. Something else that we're just going to touch upon briefly is that in many schools, in many madhabs, in many Sunni madhabs, they say that a woman, she can lead other women in prayer. In the Hanafi school, most of what the scholars have mentioned, most of them, and sometimes one scholar mentions something and it might be incorrect, it might be inaccurate, and then everybody just copies from that one scholar, and so it becomes widespread. So some of the scholars, they wrote that in the Hanafi school that we're studying, that a woman, she should not lead other women in prayer. We know a man, if he can be the imam, right? He can lead men and women and children and so on. A man can lead everybody. As for a woman, some of these scholars said that she cannot lead, of course, a man. She cannot be the imam and a man prays behind her, even if it was her husband, of course. She cannot. And likewise, some of them said that if she cannot be the imam for other women. Now, so some of the scholars wrote this, and many others copied it. A lot of them who weren't actually qualified, they weren't at that level to make the judgment, they just copied it. So later Hanafi scholars, they came and they said, well, what some of these early scholars mentioned, it's not really true, because how can that be? Because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there are narrations, strong narrations, that he commanded one of his wives, Lady Salama, Hind radiyallahu anha, she is from Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, one of the mothers of the believers radiyallahu anha. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam told her to lead the other women in prayer. Now if it was invalid, how could it be invalid when the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam instructed it? And like this there are narrations. And the other scholars of the other Sunni madhabs, they took these narrations and said, yes, there you go. So a woman can lead us in prayer. So it's not the common practiced thing in the Indian subcontinent. Okay, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, also these areas, Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, these countries, where there are a lot of Hanafis. It's not the practice thing for a woman to lead other women in prayer. But the correct saying, the strong saying, that which is supported by hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ, is that a woman can lead other women in prayer. And I reiterate, so she can't lead a man in prayer. She can't be the imam and her son prays behind her, for example, who is pubescent, or her husband prays behind her while she's the imam. No. Okay. Next time, inshallah, we will go through the Jumu'ah prayer, and like that we'll continue mentioning some of these details about prayer. It's important for us to review these details. Sometimes what happens is that we think we heard something, but we misunderstood. And then imagine if someone misunderstands, and then they go tell someone at home, and then they tell somebody else, and they tell somebody else, and this is not the way. The information needs to be conveyed in a precise way. So that's why we do this. We make sure that we've understood. Someone has a question, they ask if it can be clarified, it is clarified. So this is very, very important because, like I said, this is the best deed that a person can do as a Muslim. This is the most rewardable deed that a person can do, the obligatory prayer. So we need to make sure that we learn about it, continue learning about it, and perfect it, inshallah. The very least, of course, is to make sure that it's valid. Then, to add to that, make sure we're getting reward for it. Okay? And then, the next level, make sure we're getting the most reward that we could potentially get for it, inshallah. So next week we continue in the story of Musa alayhi salam. And it gets even more interesting, mashallah, and we'll continue with the chapters of knowledge, starting with the Jumu'ah prayer. And it's very important that mothers know about the Jumu'ah prayer so that they can teach their sons if their sons don't know about it. It's very, very important. We don't want to be people who do not pray the Jumu'ah prayer about it. It's very, very important. We don't want to be people who do not pray أقوام عن ودعهم الجمعات, that there are people who will continue missing a Jumu'ah, and then after that Allah Ta'ala locks their heart, and then لَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْغَافِلِينَ, then they will become negligent. They will be driven towards the world, driven towards desire, worldly desire, and making money, and not thinking about the prayer, not thinking about the grave, not thinking about the religious matters and responsibilities, religious responsibilities towards one's parents and one's children and one's wife, and rather they get involved in sins, and because their heart was locked, because they continually missed Jumu'ah, praying the Jumu'ah prayer. You don't want that for your son. This is upon your sons. It's not upon your daughters. So as parents, especially as mothers, because someone might hear, oh, the Jumu'ah prayer, that's for men. Okay, but mothers need to reinforce that so their sons pray. They need to know the rules of that so they know whether so they know if their son is excused in his situation from praying a Jumu'ah, or is not excused. If he's not excused, then I don't want my son to be in hellfire on the Day of Judgment. I don't want my son to suffer in this life. In this life, what about the flames of the fire of hell? I don't want my son to be constricted when if the walls of the grave come and cave in. I don't want that to happen to my son. I don't want my son to be an enormous sinner. So even the women, they learn about this chapter for their beloved family members. It's really important. May Allah Ta'ala grant us a good end. La ilaha illallah, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim.